Hello, my name is THERESA and I'm a rising third-year doctoral student at the University of Virginia School of Education and Human Development. I am in the Educational Psychology Applied Developmental Science program, and I study particularly equity, education, and transformative social emotional learning. Before coming to the University of Virginia, I was an educator. I volunteered with the Peace Corps, I taught elementary school in Brooklyn, and then I moved into the nonprofit sector and worked with high school students and getting them into college. A friend once gave me a really great piece of advice. The thing that keeps you up at night, work on that. The thing that was keeping me up at night was all the stories about Black preschoolers getting arrested for temper tantrums, or 2 Latino boys who pulled a harmless prank and were then charged with attempted murder. These are really extreme cases, but it brought me into understanding the discipline gap and the ways that we disproportionately punish and disproportionately select for punishment our youth of color. So I'm gonna let some numbers speak for themselves, and I wonder if these too will keep you up at night. In pre-K, Black preschoolers are expelled at 3 times the rate of their white peers, leading to disproportionate numbers of suspensions and expulsions as they progress through school. Black, Hispanic, and Native American students are 2 to 5 times as likely than white students and Asian students to be suspended or expelled. One study of over 1 million students found that a single suspension or expulsion nearly tripled a student's likelihood of becoming involved in the juvenile justice system the following year. So the racial disproportionality in discipline, or the discipline gap, refers to the over-selection and over-sanctioning of youth of color compared to other racial groups. So what can we do about it? First is recognizing that it's a large, widespread, systemic problem. And secondly is to understand that all players have a role. So for educators first, we can do a lot in our classrooms. The first thing I always prioritize is relationships. Every single one of your students deserves your time, attention, and care. And knowing these things can lead to really wonderful relationships, which we've seen in research prevent issues of the discipline gap. Secondly, I highly recommend empathizing first. So we're doing a million things in our classroom, but if we can pause and take a second to empathize with the student, we can sometimes understand that there's just something that they need from us that they weren't getting, rather than jumping right to discipline. Thirdly, we have to realize that all students have unique needs, and not all of those needs are being addressed in classrooms today. We have to think outside of the box, and we have to think about what students are asking for that hasn't been tried yet, that hasn't been invented yet. Next, rather than focusing on punishment and the punitive nature of discipline, I think it's really important to think about these interactions as opportunities to learn and to do better for us and for the student, giving them tools on how to handle their feelings. That can be something that's really helpful, focusing on repairing relationships, repairing the community, rather than giving them a punishment, right? Something that is meaningful and something that can help to change behavior in the future. Another piece of advice is to create engaging learning environments for all students. Students that are highly engaged in the material do not have behavioral problems. We've seen this in the literature, but it's difficult to hit every student's motivation. And so these relationships are really important so you know what motivates your children. And finally, work with your families and communities. You're a member of a team, and too often we are not connected. So working with your students' families can do really great work for helping to get rid of the discipline gap. What can principals and superintendents do? Your work is to support your school. It is to help your staff members identify what the problems are and what the solutions are. I highly recommend professional development on race, bias, and equity. Not one time a year, but regularly. Encouraging affinity groups and mentoring, different systems that allow for constant improvement and coaching to get rid of the problems of the discipline gap. It's also crucial to recruit educators from the communities that the school serves. And finally, it's important to enfold families and communities into decision-making processes. They're a huge untapped resource and team members that we must start working with. What can school board members do? It's important to allocate funding to the most important priorities. That is your schools that are struggling, the schools that aren't performing as well. Collect data that tells your educators how they're doing in equity practices, and then give them the support to fix it. This can be building culturally and critically conscious curriculum, professional development, regular training, all of these things. And then on top of that, it's thinking about changing systems. So perhaps your school wants to incorporate restorative justice practices or bring in multi-tiered systems of support. What can federal and state policymakers do? Rather than focusing on standardized tests as a school's measure of success, look at their efforts towards equity. Are they creating more classes so all students are engaged? Are they incorporating restorative justice practices? Are they keeping an eye on their academic tracking? These are ways that we can support them. And increase funding. Don't take funding away from schools that are not doing well. Do not punish them by taking away their resources. Provide resources, provide support and recommendations, and help our schools do the work that they need to do. In closing, we have to work together. No one teacher, no one school, no one policymaker can change anything. It's crucial that we attack the systemic problem from all sides and work together to do it. Constantly looking at our strategies, looking at how they're working or not working, and moving to improve them. It's only through this teamwork that we'll be able to see a difference and fulfill our promise to students that school is a safe place for them to be and learn and grow into the people that they're going to be.